Okay, welcome. This is our Empathy Cafe to discuss your feelings, concerns, etc. about Extinction Rebellion co-founder Roger Hallam's Holocaust comments. So thanks for taking part in this. We're going to start off with just doing short introductions, your name, where you're located, if you're part of XR, and just any short comment about yourself. Very short. I'm Edwin Rutch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I'm part of the Extinction Rebellion Empathy Circle work group, and I'm located in the San Francisco Bay Area near Berkeley, California. And I've been working for many years, about 12, 13 years, on how do we create a more empathic culture and society. Bill, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Bill Filler. I'm a retired special education teacher here in Northern California. I'm a member of the Empathy 10 team, and I'm also taking the XR facilitators training.
And Carolina?
Hello, everyone. My name is Karolina Kubiak. I'm calling from Poland. I am a member of a local XR group, Extinction Rebellion group, and I'm also involved in some international bodies, especially Global South. And probably in next few weeks, I will be involved in international support team.
Okay, and Dave?
Yes, I'm from Ontario, Canada. And my background is nonviolent communication. I'm an NVC practitioner. I've been involved with that for about a year and a half. And a large part of that is empathy. And I want to expand my skills and be part of a means of influence to people that are making decisions and are doing important work, including XR.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. And also your camera's not working, so that's why we don't have your video. Just make a note of that. So are you familiar with the Empathy Circle practice? Because I know the other three here are. So should I give, I just want to know how.
I have, I've watched a few YouTube videos as to how it works. And so I know the, I know how it works. I've never done it, but I think I can handle it. Okay.
Okay, so for the audience, if anybody's watching this, I'll just give a short, very short introduction. So in this process, one person is going to speak. They're going to select who they're going to speak to, and they're going to talk about the topic that we have, which is about our feelings and concerns about Roger Hallam's Holocaust comments. And that person is going to, the listener is going to reflect back their understanding of what the speaker has said to the satisfaction of the speaker. So you speak a little bit, say an idea or two, pause, the listener reflects back their understanding, then you speak some more, and then pause, and the listener reflects that back. And we have 5-minute turns, and I don't know, Carolina or Bill, would you take time?
Sure, I have a...
You got it? You got a timer? So we'll have 5-minute turns, and then there'll be a little buzzer that Bill has. And at that point, you want to sort of wrap up whatever you're saying. And if you're done sooner, before 5 minutes, you can just say something like, I feel fully heard, and that indicates that it's then the listener's turn to become the speaker. The first thing the listener does is they'll select who to speak to, and then the process continues, and we're just going to keep going around for the full, we have about an hour and 45 minutes left, of time. So we just, and at the very end, we'll just sort of do a very short 10-minute debrief. And as the listener, if the speaker is saying a lot and you're needing a pause, you can interrupt the speaker and say, oh, can I just reflect back what I'm hearing? And when you're reflecting back, also as a listener, you're just wanting to reflect back what it is you're hearing to the satisfaction of the speaker and not be putting your own ideas and questions and comments into it. You're just trying to hear and reflect back your understanding of what the speaker is saying. So the best way is just to begin, the process, and everybody can just observe how it works, and it's fairly easy to get the hang of it. So with that, we could jump right in. We have our topic on which I've mentioned a couple times. So who would like to start, and who would you like to speak to? And I guess I'll start, actually, and I'll speak to Carolina. And I get my 5-minute timed.
Okay, I'm listening.
Okay, so we have, there's been I've seen a lot of talk on Facebook about this issue, and some people have said they did want space to talk about it. So just 2 days ago, I just set this up, and so I had hoped there would be more participants, but I think it was important just to get the ball rolling to talk about this topic.
So what I'm hearing you saying that you wrote, you read some chat exchanges on Facebook, and you noticed that people talk about this situation. And just 2 days ago, you decided that we have to organize empathy circle on this topic. You hope that it will be more people, but somehow they didn't appear. Maybe it's too short, and you think that we just should keep going.
Yeah, it was very short notice. So I guess that's it. Just I feel fully heard. I just want to get the ball rolling. So I feel fully heard.
Okay. So I will choose Bill to give Dave more chance to observe.
Okay, listening.
I learned more about this issue just this week. I heard about it, but I didn't pay much attention to it before. I check all the statements made by our movement, by comments by different papers, Decide, The Guardian, just this week to learn a little bit about this situation and the statement of the Extinction Rebellion and that sort of thing. I stopped there.
Sure, okay. So what you're saying is that you kind of did due diligence in researching the issue, looking at what people are saying, source articles and papers and things to try to gain a better understanding of the issue.
Mm-hmm. And I still feel uncomfortable because it's just knowing the whole story from the second hand. It's not, I wasn't the witness of the whole situation, so it's still difficult to make any judgments. It's very risky to make judgments about the whole situation.
Okay. So even with that research, you feel that your information is still secondhand, and you feel that you would really need to have been there and heard the comment to really start to, form any sort of judgment for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And I look at the whole situation, and I think that there are few different issues. First is the statement Roger Hallam made what he actually said. And in two variants, one variant is when he just relate to this expression, another fuckery in a human history. And another thing is when we relate to this expression with all the context. This is one thing. Maybe I stop there.
Okay. So you were looking at his comments, and there are two kind of veins, and I'm not quite sure I'm getting the core of the first one, but basically it was an offhand comment about a very wide-ranging and deeply troubling and tragic incident, and so you're trying to kind of come to grips with it.
Well, the thing is that I see several issues to analyze and to discuss. First is the statement. Second is the position of Roger Hallam in a movement and his behavior as a co-founder and sort of leader of the movement, and his relation to the all activists. So those are two general issues.
All right, let me stop there. Let me get there. Okay. So there are two issues. One is about the comment itself and its effect, and the other one is Roger's place in the movement, and then that issue.
Okay. So first, I want to elaborate a little bit this first issue, the comment he made. He was about his new book. He was promoting his new book in Germany, and we can analyze his comment in two aspects. Well, the statement, this expression, another fuckery in a human history, this is one thing. And the other analysis we can do is to analyze one is the expression he used, and another thing is the idea that was behind this expression and the whole context of this expression. I stop there, and I'm wrapping up, but I stop there.
Okay. So you're talking about now there are three things: is the comment, and then the kind of the context of the comment, and then there's also his context within the movement. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Did I catch everything? Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to wrap up with about this expression. He shouldn't use such word. That's simple.
Right.
When you are a public figure and you speak about somebody's death, never use such word. Never. That's simple.
Okay, so
for me, at least for me, it's simple.
In addressing the statement on its face value, you feel that that was a mistake and should never, things like that should never be referred to in that way. It was a mistake.
Never should you, well, saying that it was mistake, it's not enough.
Okay.
That's serious thing. Never use such word when you speak about somebody's death.
Okay.
Doesn't matter whose death.
Right. So saying
never,
right.
Never ever.
Okay. So my reflection saying a mistake was sort of not getting the full gravity of the situation. You're talking about not only one person's death, but millions of people's of death. And so it should never be referred to in an offhand way. It needs much more consideration and thought.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, I feel heard.
Great. All right, Dave, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, would you listen to me, please?
Yeah, I'll listen.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Okay. Well, Well, I have not done as much due diligence as Carolina or Edwin um, about this particular subject. I see my role as sort of like was facilitating conversation. Um, what struck me about this issue is that certainly I don't agree. I don't know, you know, the comment was insensitive and wrong, and I believe probably mistake is Carolina's criticism is correct. Mistake doesn't really cover it. But on the other hand, I see the XR movement as being inclusive. And I'm a special education teacher.
You might want to pause too, give him.
Right, okay. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay. You want me to go ahead, reflect now? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you didn't do as much due diligence as
Right.
Edwin or Carolina. But you you do have some opinions on it, and I think that you see it as an inclusive organization, and your role is a facilitator, and therefore the issues aren't as important to you as perhaps facilitating between the people that are having the dispute. Do I have that?
Right. Yeah, basically, the thrust of what I feel can be helpful is not, I mean, I'll participate and give my opinions, but I don't think that's as helpful as fostering dialogue and discussion. Yeah. So I'm looking for a way in which someone, like in special ed, I had students who had committed sometimes atrocious actions, tortured animals or did other things that would be reprehensible. And so what I had to do is to find the more functional parts that they had and develop those. We always said, don't blame the person, blame the action. Talk about how the action isn't working, but don't try to identify the person like you're a bad kid or something like that. That was the exact opposite of what we want to do. You're a good kid at heart, and you're badly, badly mistaken, and you made a choice. Here's how you can make a better one. I'll stop there.
Okay. So you're talking about focusing, I'm going to say, on the positive. You said functional part of a person, and not so much on the negative. You want to bring out the best in people. That's what you do with your special ed that I think you teach.
Right.
And you think that that's applicable in this situation as well.
Yes. And the Holocaust has affected my family greatly, as all those issues, and still continues to, as authoritarianism and anti-Semitism continues at a fever pitch today. And I've also spoken with, several persons. One person who was in the movie Shoah, about his experiences and his wife's experiences in Poland during, being with the Polish resistance. So it is something that is very important to me, even though I don't have, I didn't listen to Roger's comment specifically.
Okay, so the Holocaust has affected your family, and also there's someone that was in the movie Shoah, and could you just repeat your point about?
Sure. Just that this person and also his wife related their personal Holocaust stories, which I was very humbled to hear.
Okay. So you were humbled to hear the stories of this person, and his wife is related to the Holocaust.
Yes. Thank you, Dave. I feel heard. Sorry about that. There we go.
Okay. Well,
This thing is stupid. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right. If I start then?
Yes, you can select who you'd like to speak to. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to pick you, Edwin.
Okay, listening.
Yes. I did not study in detail the issues. I checked a few things out so I could get the basic idea of what had gone on, what Roger had said, and the reaction from XR Germany and XR England. And it sounds like they disavowed Roger. And I look at that kind of situation as a form of, first of all, protection for the rest of XR, because they believe that he's been discredited, and they want to make sure that they separate themselves if possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that is where they're at, and I think Roger himself had wanted to express his point of view about, the way I understand it, about the nature of humanity.
Mm-hmm. Can I just pause you there if I can reflect back?
Sure.
It's becoming a lot. So you haven't, what I'm hearing is you haven't looked in too deeply into this issue, but you did do some checking, and you saw that XR Germany and XR UK have disavowed his comments, and that you see that as a form of protection, that they were wanting to protect themselves. And see, there was more. I'm kind of not.
Yes. Well, also from Roger's point of view, which was that he was making a statement about the nature of humanity, in my opinion, and worded it in a way that apparently offended a great many people.
So you're saying that Roger was trying to make just sort of like a comment or about the nature of humanity, and this is what offended a lot of people, and that's sort of your understanding of the situation?
Yes, that's the way I'm looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think XR is certainly, one of their major principles is nonviolence. And I look at that. I didn't mention the punitive nature. I think possibly XR Germany was kind of punishing Roger for making a comment which was insulting to that organization. And also that could be part of the motivation of XR England as well. And I think that if you're an organization that believes in nonviolence, I think a punitive motive is a form of violence.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're seeing that XR has nonviolence as one of their values, and if they're being punitive towards, for example, Roger, that is that being punitive is a form of violence.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I feel heard.
Oh, okay. You have more time if there's more, but
could probably no, nothing's coming to mind right now. Then.
Okay, great, thanks. Then I'll speak to Bill.
Listening?
Yeah, what Dave is talking about, being punitive, kind of ties in with sort of the response that I would like to have seen, which is a more empathic, mutually empathic response, is the sort of the response and overall attitude I would like to have seen.
Okay, so you're agreeing with Dave's characterization as punitive being, somewhat violent in nature, and you would have liked a more empathic response.
And it's an empathic approach all around. So in terms of Roger talking about the Holocaust or genocide or, just all this, to actually frame it in terms of a lack of empathy, that there is sort of there has been, these genocides are a lack of people empathizing with each other. And so there's there's an empathy deficit there. So I would sort of like reframe, this and say that what we want is a more empathic world, and then kind of be moving towards, framing our discussion of how do we create a more empathic, mutually empathic world.
Okay, so then you would have preferred Roger to basically frame his comments, or you feel it'd be more effective for anyone to frame the comments in terms of these things occur because of a lack of empathy.
Yeah,
we want a more empathic world.
Yeah, so the genocides, all these genocides, is a lack of empathy for the people who are, impacted, and there's lack of care and empathy for them, and then the question then becomes, how do we create more empathy, for each other? So we're talking about an empathy deficit, and then how do we address that? You're muted.
Sorry, you're saying that these things occur because of a lack of empathy, and then the constructive solution entails us following tools and things that we can use to create more empathy and more listening, real listening.
Yeah, exactly. And then the same thing in terms of the environment, that there's an empathy deficit of one generation for the next. Not thinking of the impact of environmental damage and global warming and the flooding and all the stuff that can happen. It's not empathizing with future generations about their well-being. So that's another empathy deficit there. So it really comes, again, it's like, then the question is, how do we create more mutual empathy and more empathy for, the future generations? And that being said, I know plenty of parents and grandparents that are totally concerned about the well-being of their children and grandchildren. And so there is a huge amount of that empathy and care already for future generations, maybe more directly with families and their own personal generation.
Okay. So you were talking about there's also a lack of empathy for in generational terms for the present generation with future generations because of the lack of action on climate change, and that we need to then create. And you also have a caveat saying that there are plenty of people, in the older generation who do have that empathy, but it's not being expressed, and we really need to strengthen that dialogue.
Yeah, they might have it for their own children, and maybe we need it for, future, kind of broaden it, as well as a deeper connection with the environment, instead of sort of, we need to dominate the environment, that we need to have a felt sense of it. And plenty of people have that too. Just when I see the pollution or degradation or oil spills, you can just feel the pain and the unpleasant, painful feelings that those bring up. Like when I am in like in Indonesia or someplace, I was in Bali, and there's just like rivers of garbage, coming out into the ocean there. It's so polluted, and that was very, plastics and all that. It feels viscerally very unpleasant, painful, sickening.
You're talking about an empathy deficit for humans in the environment, and then rather than just seeing them as you having us seeing as they're having to dominate somehow the environment, we have to create a more empathic and a felt experience with the environment. And that's not to say that you also feel the pain of pollution and other things being done to harm the environment. So you are feeling that as well.
Very well heard. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Carolina, will you listen to me?
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay. Yeah, I just, again, I think I agree with what Edwin said. I think I love to get out in nature myself. And when I do, I'm healed. Nature heals me. I'll stop there.
So, first of all, you agree with what Edwin was saying just a while ago, and you believe that nature is healing you.
Right. And when I'm in that place, I can actually read, the animals and what they're doing better, and sort of sense their needs as well as my own. So I tend to understand when they are kind of like doing something and they're ignoring me. My presence is fairly ignored, whereas they might be like a mother sea otter might be nursing her baby or feeding her baby, and then my presence is definitely not wanted. And so I, paddle around. I'll stop there.
So you're noticing animals' behavior, and you feel like spending some time in nature, you can sense behavior of other animals, and you recognize when you are welcome, when you are not welcomed, and when you are simply ignored as a one more species.
Right. And I do want to address something, that Edwin had said, and that, sort of like is that these genocides are a lack of empathy, which I do agree, but just like a mistake doesn't really qualify, doesn't really cover it. I don't, I can see where people say a lack of empathy, that sort of doesn't go far enough here. And so there are two things that I think about that.
Wait a second, because
Sure.
it might be difficult for me.
Sure. Okay, sure.
So you also you may agree that all those situation of crime, murder, slaughter is lack of empathy, but you wouldn't call it a mistake. Is that what you mean?
Well, I'm just saying that calling like sort of a genocide a lack of empathy is like calling Roger Hallam's word a mistake. It doesn't quite cover it. It's in the right direction, but doesn't quite. Yeah.
So you mean that actually it is right direction in analysis, but calling it just calling it just lack of empathy is not enough.
Right. So a cynic might say, "Oh, sure, if the prisoners of war just sat down with the guards at the concentration camps and held empathy circles, everybody would have, just been better." And I don't think that's what Edwin's saying. And I don't think, but I do stick by the fact that a lack of empathy is profound, and giving empathy is profound. And is the right, I believe, the dialogue and listening to each other is the right solution to creating a world where those genocides don't exist.
So you kind of make it more specific situation. For example, we can't say that empathy circle between guards and prisoners in a concentration camp could resolve the problem, but definitely lack of empathy is a part of the whole situation, and developing it might change. And for example, I don't know, let us avoid future.
Yeah, I will kind of paraphrase who I consider to be my some of my spiritual teachers, which are there's an African American church where there was this shooting in Atlanta, I believe. I should know the name, I don't. But those people were just beautiful people. And one of the things they talked about, and Martin Luther King, and that he says that, you know, yeah, I mean, hate is like fire and love is like the water. And you may not have enough love or water to put out the fire, but that doesn't mean that water isn't the answer to putting out the fire. And so therefore, what we need is to really, you know, full court press on empathy and love. And I'm done.
So you're recalling the shootings in one of the Afro-American churches in Atlanta, and you recalling this paraphrase, this metaphor used by one of the members of this congregation, and this person said that water, when we use water to stop fire and we don't have enough water, it doesn't mean that the water is not the solution.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
I feel
you.
fully heard.
Okay, so I will choose Dave. Dave, would you listen to me?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Well, Bill will not hear that I love this metaphor he actually presented. I love it. This is very, very nice metaphor, very getting to the point, to the problem of lack of empathy. Yeah, I stopped there.
So you love the metaphor, and about lack of empathy. And I'm not clear about the metaphor you're referring to. Is that the water and fire metaphor?
Yeah. For me, it might be a metaphor of a lack of empathy.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so you, it's something that is very meaningful for you to hear that metaphor.
And now I would like to come back to what I start talking about in my first round when I was talking about the comment Roger Hallam made, a rude, a vulgar comment he made about somebody's death, mass death, sure. And then I said that this is one thing, but another thing is the context and the whole idea he was expressing. I stopped that to not say.
Okay, sure. So you want to go back to your first comment about the rude way he talked about the Holocaust, but also you want to talk now about put that in the context of what he was saying.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. And actually, you all somehow were talking about it already. We have a very cruel history. Our species, human, have very cruel history. And acknowledging that there are more events like Holocaust doesn't mean we don't acknowledge Holocaust. we just should honor all the victims of different nations, ethnic groups that died in the very similar planet, organized and precisely executed slaughters, like Armenians, like people in Congo, like Aborigines in Australia, indigenous people in America, both North and Latin America.
Okay, if I stop
A
you there.
lot of such things. Okay, yeah.
Okay. So you think that putting the Holocaust in context of the other genocides, other extinction, I might say, or attempts to extinct, I'm sorry, to put to death masses of people throughout history does not disparage the Holocaust.
Yeah.
It's itself. Okay.
Yeah, this is very important. But also we should start honoring all the ethnic groups, nations that disappeared from our planet just because other genocides, mass slaughtering, mass killings, you know. And I mentioned just few examples.
Yes, yes. So you believe that we should honor all the people that have died throughout history, and kind of have a place in our hearts for them, I would say, for what they were put through.
Yeah.
And you mentioned specific groups.
Yeah, yeah. And it is hard for me to speak about it because I live in Poland. I'm Polish. And this is the place where German Nazi built concentration camp and murdered most of the Jews from the whole
Can I
Europe.
stop you there? So it's very hard for you to talk about it, being from Poland, and the fact that a lot of Jews were murdered in Poland. It's part of the history of your country.
Well, the problem is it's not the part of history of my country, it's the part of history of Third Reich on Polish land. This is very important misunderstanding. I'm not, I don't want to reject the fact that many Polish people are anti-Semitist. That's true. And they have been anti-Semitist before the World War II and during the World War II. I see time is up. I'm not trying to avoid or reject that fact, but concentration camps were Nazi German camps, not Polish camps. This is very important. This is harmful for Polish people, saying that it's a part of Polish history. It's a part of German Nazi history on Polish land.
So it's something, it's not part of the history of your country. It's something that happened to your country through the German and Nazi invasion. It was done to your country.
Yeah, yeah.
But you don't want to also discount that there were some people that were also some Polish people that were helping the Nazis.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of anti-Semitism in our country. That's also true. Thank you. I feel heard. Thank you.
Oh, okay, you're welcome. Okay, Bill, all the
Okay,
Bill, are
listening.
you there, Bill? Okay. There's a lot to cover. We've covered a lot of things. So I want to go back to the lack of empathy that Edwin was talking about, and you were talking about as well. Not only in the situation with Roger Hallam, but also with the environment and the um, and the closeness that you feel to the environment. There's an empathy with the environment, and I would like to expand that to politics in general, on all the backbiting that you hear, and nobody really seems to me is trying to really understand the other parties or people that stand in opposition to whatever party that they're with.
Okay, so you were talking about what Edwin and I were talking about, a lack of empathy for the environment, and you'd like to expand that to politics and thinking about the way that people from different political perspectives don't seem to be able to engage in any kind of constructive dialogue.
Yes, not only not constructive, they don't really see the other person's point of view or empathetic to their point of view and understand where they're coming from. They seem to be more interested in just pushing their agenda, and then I believe people push back, and then you don't come to resolutions.
So you're saying in the political arena, people aren't listening; they're mostly fighting.
That's pretty much it. Yes.
Okay.
And I'm going to expand that a little bit.
Sure.
It's important in politics. It's important in governments, and of course that's what happens with within nations as well. Pushing their agendas on other nations, and it's the power struggle. And rather than trying to come together and work things out, and I think we really do need to be empathetic to what's going on with the other person, and the other person needs to be empathetic with you in order to find solutions.
Mm-hmm. So you're expanding it beyond, like, say, domestic politics to international politics, and where one nation exerts essentially its dominance and power over another. And we're saying you're advocating for more empathy and dialogue in all these areas to help understand and to basically change without this dysfunctional conflict. And I think that's mostly it.
That's mostly it. I think
if I missed something, let me know.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if this is expanding a little bit more. I think it's part of our history. It's part of not only on the macroscopic level of governments and politics, it's also part of daily life. And so I think it starts small in terms of being empathetic with each other. And that's why I like these empathy circles, because we're doing that on a very interactive level between people around the world. doing our best to understand each other. And I think from there, that's the start of at every level, small or large, to creating strategies that will work to meet everybody's needs.
Okay, so you were talking about empathy on many macro and micro, and this is an example. And what you like about the circles is that it's a small and intimate space, but it basically is demonstrating the kind of listening and skills that we need to then expand to the population as a whole in order to make progress and and to actually deal with the problems that face us.
Yes, thank you. That's it.
Okay, great. All right. Sure. Did I miss? You said a lot. Did I miss anything?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Just if there was anything I missed,
Yeah. What's that?
No. Okay.
I'm finished.
Okay. Okay. Great. All right. All right. I'll talk to Edwin.
Listening.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the XR, and I'm seeing all the things that they're doing, and I see a movement in development, and that this is there's a lot of wide diversity of opinions. There's a wide, and even though I would say probably it's mostly on the left. I'm not sure because I don't know everybody in XR, but I'd say mostly on the left. But there is a gap, it seems, between sort of degrees of leftism, let's just say, between the people who I see, for instance, a constant harping on capitalism as being a bad thing. And I certainly think that, greedy capitalism is well deserving of criticism. But nevertheless, are we talking about a corporation? Or are we talking about a family that owns a corner grocery store? Those are two very different things for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I'm hearing there is that you're looking at XR and you're seeing it's an organization in development, mm-hmm. and then you're also seeing that you think it's primarily on the left, and there's different gradations, different opinions on the left. Mm-hmm. that are taking part, and you see that one of the criticisms that they have is about capitalism. It sounds like you're wanting some clarity about, what does that mean, that criticism, that there are, greedy capitalists, but then there's also family, like the family store next,
right.
And then you're kind of maybe just wondering what people are criticizing or talking about.
Right. And what this means is that people have developed entrenched views. And when we do that, including myself, we don't listen as well. And so that's why I think that the empathy circle process that is going on here is so important.
So if I understand it, it's like, if you just say capitalism is bad, it becomes like this entrenched view. And then when you have that view, you don't listen to other people. And so what we're doing here of mutual listening is really important.
Right. And I certainly would say for the people, the capitalists, there are these extreme capitalists who dismiss human development, human pain, and a whole range of other things that should be addressed as well. So there's entrenched capitalist views as well.
Mm-hmm. So there's entrenched views on different sides, and the capitalist people can be also very entrenched in their view, not being really empathizing with with other viewpoints.
Right.
So it
And
sounds
so
like you want some balance there to be sort of balanced. In
yeah, I want specifics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want people to, you know, there's so many times people just label people, and I want specifics. In other words, I didn't label my students as bad or good or this or that. You know, what I would say to my students is that you're heroes, each one of you, the girls and the boys and heroines, because you're kids dealing with adult problems. And that was the truth. I wasn't just, you know, that wasn't just pablum. That wasn't just, you know, happy talk. That's the truth of the dealing. And that's profound. And they made progress. And we celebrated that progress. That was important. They were important. They mattered. So anyway, I think that that's what we need to do, is to basically talk about foibles and fallacies that we all have, but keep us within the human community. We're all within the human community. We're going to have to all deal with this together, and we're going to have to all get on the same page in some form or another.
Okay. So what I think I'm getting is you think we shouldn't be judging each other, you know,
right?
But really seeing each other's humanity, and you did that with your students, kind of encouraging them to see themselves as heroes, understand that, you know, they were kind of dealing with adult issues, and but the core seems to be the sort of the humanity, seeing each other's humanity, not being judgmental.
Right, and focusing on the actions, which which are ripe for criticism or admiration, and then, you know, and then a path towards improving. That's it. I'm done.
Yeah, so not being judgmental, and also being more specific, not saying capitalism is, you know, just bad in a broad sense, but kind of be more specific, and then give, you know, also constructive, positive steps forward.
Thank you, Edwin. I feel fully heard.
Okay. Then I'll speak to Dave.
Okay, I'm listening.
Okay. So the one question I did have is, you know, I'd mentioned empathy deficit, and Bill had said in terms of a lack of empathy in terms of genocide, and Bill had said it didn't go far enough. It was in the right direction. And I just had a real curiosity, like, what would be the word then, that if it doesn't go far enough, what is the word then that he would feel comfortable with?
Okay, so you want to know what word would replace genocide that would be more meaningful and capture perhaps the depth of and the meaning of what actually happened.
Yeah, I had used the word an empathy deficit. Right? So is it something like extreme, profound empathy deficit? You know, it's like, what is the word that he would like? He felt uncomfortable with just calling it empathy deficit. It wasn't profound enough. Would a word like extreme, you know, overwhelming empathy deficit, I wonder if that would sort of resonate with him. So I'm kind of looking what that word would be.
So do you want Bill to reply to that?
No, I want you to just reflect it.
You want me to reply to it?
Yeah. Not just reply, just to reflect it. Yeah, just to reflect it. I'm kind of speaking to him. Saying, I'm speaking to him through you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So what word would so you're wondering if extreme empathy deficit would be the proper wording, what Bill was getting at?
Yeah, and I know that the word evil is used a lot, you know, and I've always felt I have not liked the word evil because, and then a book came out by an academic at Cambridge University, Simon Baron-Cohen, and it's called The Science of Evil. And the subtitle is about empathy, and he's making the case, which is something I'd thought about before, is that when you say evil, it sounds like it's this supernatural force, and it's sort of, you know, it's like Satan or just something that's sort of beyond our experience, right? It's in the realm of God, you know, and Satan, sort of this kind of supernatural world. And he was sort of objecting to the word evil because you can't grab a hold of it and kind of find solutions to it. It's just this force that's kind of beyond.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah. So, yes.
Okay. All right. So you read this book where, while you were talking about the word evil, and you read this book in which the author was saying that evil is a supernatural sounding word that you can't really grab a hold of. It's amorphous, and that I'm guessing that it's not a word that he was comfortable with. And I'm also wondering if you have the same feeling about the word evil.
Yeah, it's kind of like good and evil, right? It's kind of a judgment, and it's also, you can't, and he was also making the case that an empathy deficit, or is a better term, because empathy is something that you can study, you can develop training for, and it's more actionable to find solutions to heading off these, you know, like genocides and you know, just these shootings that happen. Because if you just say, oh, it's evil and that's the end of it, you know, it's like you don't grab a hold of it and problem solve. And if you say it's an empathy deficit, there's scientific, you know, things that you can do to sort of study it and develop solutions. It gives you a handle on addressing these, you know, horrific things that happen.
Okay, can I stop you there?
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that he used the word empathy deficit. It's a word that you used as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you can do. You can do something with it. There's things that are doable in order to overcome the empathy deficit. Whereas with evil, it's too vague.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay. So, yes, you're going to have to remind me where we're at, Edwin.
You select who to speak to. You select who to speak to. Carolina hasn't spoken recently, so you might want to choose her.
Sure. Okay, so I'll speak to you, Carolina. Are you there?
Okay, I'm listening.
Okay. So, yes, I like Edwin's point about empathy deficit, and you can do things that will overcome that. There's ways to learn empathy, as Edwin was saying, and practice it. I do think that we all have some ability to empathize. However, in our society, it's not something that is certainly learned in school or within families, and so it's not encouraged. And I think that's very unfortunate. Instead, we're taught to compete and to have the win-lose paradigm. If I win, you lose, and vice versa. And then there's aggression.
Can I try reflect? Can I try?
Sure. Yes.
So first, what I'm hearing you saying that you agree, not agree, you like what Edwin was saying about empathy deficit, and you're thinking about learning empathy, practicing empathy, as a way of helping this situation, and you're noticing that actually school education system is not the place where people learn empathy. That's what you mean?
Yes, that's part of where the heart of the
Maybe I
society.
lost something, so correct me.
Well, there's not it's society in general, including schools, but there's also, I talked about the values of not that competition is necessarily bad, but win, lose, I'm the best, that sort of thing because I won. It's not empathetic. It's things like that. There's a lot of an aggression. Taught to be very aggressive.
Okay, so it's not just education system, but it's much more. It's actually the whole culture, patterns, sets of value we appreciate, and they all kind of aggregate lack of empathy, values like competition or being perfect, being better than others. All this culture is a culture of sort of culture of empathy deficit. That's what you mean? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's you got it. So I think that it's also, I know what I was going to say. I was going to say that I'm not surprised that there is a split within XR, given the culture that we live in. It's so endemic that it's hard to see past all the programming that we have had in our lives to be empathetic in a situation like the one that has occurred between Roger and other members of XR.
Well, that I'm not sure if I got what you mean, but I will try anyway.
Okay.
So you mean that this movement, Extinction Rebellion, is sort of part of this culture, and it's very hard, even it's sort of program of this organization, but we still are part of the culture, and it's very difficult to not behave like this and to be empathic in the situation that was with Roger Hallam. That's what you meant, or maybe?
Yes.
I missed.
No,
Okay.
You got it. Yeah.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So maybe I will choose Bill. Bill,
listening.
would you listen to me?
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting that what Dave said. I agree with it, and I struggle all the time with almost every discussion I have with my friends within the movement. I always say we want to change this culture, this civilization, but remember, we are part of this culture. We are part of this civilization. It is in us, in every our actions, in our reflexes, if the way we speak, if the way we build relations with each other and with our opponents. It's everywhere, and probably it is in what Roger Hallam did. I stopped there.
Okay, so you're talking about, you liked what David said, and you also said we want to change society, but we're also part of society, a product society. And
Yeah.
so what I infer from that is that there are our own self blind spots and things like that that we have to deal with as we seek to change things.
Yeah, yeah. So we need to change ourselves. We need to start with ourselves. Yeah. I would like to refer to this deficit of empathy deficit, and that this expression is not enough. I think that saying that this is empathy deficit, it's enough. It's not enough because empathy deficit can lead to different outcomes, many different outcomes. It's too general to say this is lack of empathy, because lack of empathy may lead to different outcomes, not particularly to genocide or Holocaust.
Okay,
It
so
might.
you're saying, okay, so you're saying that the empathy deficit, you're not quite comfortable with that as a term because it's too general, and it can lead to something as, for instance, not listening to your partner or genocide, and that's a wide range between.
Yeah. Well, I am comfortable with this term. It's okay. It's just not good explanation of genocide or mass killings. We need to say more than just lack of empathy. That's what I mean.
Okay, so you're fine with the concept of an empathy deficit, and but when we address as genocide and things like that, there needs to be a different way of speaking about it.
Yeah. And there is obviously the problem with confusing or kind of not sharp boundaries between empathy and sympathy. That's also what happens to us, and those boundaries can't be sharp. They always will be blur.
So you think that a lot of people confuse, and they're very two similar concepts, empathy and sympathy, and in order to be empathetic, you can never have a too sharp a boundary between them. It'll always be somewhat blurry.
Yeah. And I wanted to come back to the position of Roger Hallam. So it's the second aspect of the whole problem. And I like what you were saying in your first round, that we should refer to actions, not to people. I like that. I saw that.
Okay, so then now you're going and turning towards the Roger Hallam issue, and you like the way I characterized it when we talk about actions rather than labeling people.
And I see the space for at least two we can call it restorative empathy circle, but I actually like restoring empathy circle. I see two such circles to do.
Okay.
First one.
Okay. So you see, I'm not quite sure if I got the thing, but two circles, restorative empathy circles, and there was a sort of division between the two that I didn't quite get.
Okay, so one circle, I didn't name them yet.
Okay.
So one circle I see between Roger Hallam or even some activists from Extinction Rebellion and Jews, Armenians, people of Congo, indigenous Americans, Aborigines, all the small and bigger nations in Soviet Union. A lot of such groups, religious groups that were killed. And this is one circle we can organize and try to give voice to everyone in this circle.
So you see, one circle would be between Roger and people who have been have personal experiences of abuse from all over the world. So that's one circle.
But it might also include some other activists from Extinction Rebellion.
Okay.
Not just Roger Hallam.
Right. Okay. So people from XR and people who have experienced these things from all over the world.
Yeah. Including Jews.
Including Jews.
Yeah, especially Jews. And the other circle is between Roger Hallam and other activists inside the movement.
Okay. So
his position is very specific, and some activists might feel harmed by his actions.
Okay. So you see need for two types of restorative circles. One is between XR and indigenous peoples and other people who have been subjects of colonialism and genocide. And then also within XR itself between Roger and other XR members because of the damage that, that his comments have caused. So to try to restore that.
Yeah. And probably now we harming Roger Hallam, misunderstanding his intentions.
Right. And also, let's not forget having empathy and understanding for Roger Hallam himself.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. I feel heard.
All right. I'll talk to Edwin.
Listening.
Okay. So it was interesting, Edwin, when you said that, what would be like extreme empathy or super XXX empathy deficit or whatever those things are. Right. And obviously it doesn't, when you give those examples. And I was fine. I also struggled when Carolina said, well, mistake is the wrong word. It just doesn't really cover it. And I agreed. I felt that, but I didn't have a word for that either, like a super mistake or a triple. And so when I talk about that inadequacy, I don't think it needs another term, a coined term. I don't think that covers it. And that's what I seem to get from both of these things. My inability to find a better word than mistake, and then talking about empathy deficit as to describe like genocide. After hearing the stories of people, it's just very hard. There's the degree is so profound that you do feel you need something else. And so in thinking about what you said, it's not like another word to just coin it, but as we've been talking about creating a vision statement, I think that's what we need to go. What does empathy look like in those sort of situations? How would an empathetic approach, and I think you need to address that. I'll stop there for right now.
Okay, so this issue about the right words to use, that, do we coin a word or, and it sounds like you don't really need to have that. Like it's it's like you don't have to have that word, but the thing that you are looking at is in those situations, how do we transform them empathically?
Right.
Like at the Holocaust or.
And I can give an example. Yeah. And it's just that any coined word just doesn't cover it. Mm-hmm. Any coined word doesn't cover it. And so I think that we do disservice when we try to just kind of coin a word. Mm-hmm. So let me give an example. In World War II was created by the aftermath of World War I, when essentially the Allies imposed crippling sanctions on Germany, causing the German populace to forcing them to experience extreme hardship. In World War II, in the aftermath, we had the Marshall Plan, which treated the vanquished enemies both Japan and Germany and the rest of Europe in a very different manner. And what grew up was very different. It was a flowering of liberal democracies where there was, not perfect and certainly under stress today, but where certainly would be preferable to pre-World War II Germany. I'll stop there.
So you're really looking at sort of what are the responses and you're kind of comparing, one response with World War I aftermath of very punitive sanctions, etc., on Germany, and then the result that created, versus after World War II, sort of the Marshall Plan and a whole different approach that had a whole different outcome. So sort of looking at the approaches and have better, more effective approaches to these issues.
And so I think that the difficult task that, I know that we in this group are facing, and I think XR and everybody seems to be, is then how do you create a culture of empathy? And then how do we essentially, like in the cartoons where that small snowball rolls down and takes out several houses, how do we stop that snowball and how do we melt that snowball before, at the time, like genocide is like at the time where it's as big as a house and it's rolling over the houses. Trying to push it and stop it there is not going to be very effective. Stopping it from at the top of the hill before it forms it would be much more effective.
So really seeing that things like a genocide, that it's part of like a snowball. It started somewhere small and it kind of grew and grew. And if you're trying to stop the being in the middle of the genocide, it's pretty hard to stop it. But it's really looking sort of upstream or uphill to just when it was small. Can we kind of head these things off?
Yeah. Thank you, Edwin. I feel fully heard.
Okay. Thanks. Speak to Carolina.
Okay, I'm listening.
So for me, it's, I think you were starting to address that too. I think we're all starting to address it, like, what do we do sort of next? What is, so thinking about responses, I'm seeing doing more of these circles that we're doing right now, just open general dialogue circles to address this topic. I wish we had started a little bit sooner, kind of when the like right when it happened would have been good to have to have the mechanisms all in place that something happens like this and it can be immediate response, and the response is going to be to bring it into an empathy circle to discuss.
So you speaking about what to do next, and you think that it's good to do more empathy circles, and you admitting that we sort of overslept the moment, because the better way to deal with such situation is to respond immediately with empathy circle before the whole situation evolves.
And I think XR is sort of working on that because there is a conflict resolution team trying to develop a response. And we have been talking with them as well. So it seems like this is sort of in development, that like XR is trying to figure out how to address this. And I think we have a lot to contribute with the empathy work group. Yeah,
and you admitting also that there is a conflict resolution. Well, it has a little bit different name. I've forgotten, but you're referring to the group that is dealing with this situation within the movement, outside the movement, and it's in a progress, and probably we need to wait a little bit, but we are in contact with them, and you believe that we can actually contribute to this situation and help it.
Yeah, so one, doing what we're doing here, and I hope more people will take part in terms of just having these dialogues like we're doing here, because I find this very constructive and healing, and sort of models, how to go forward. So do more of these, and we have one next week scheduled.
So you're thinking about doing more such circles like this one we're participating right now, and you hope that there will be more people who will take part in it. And because it's very calming, healing, kind of giving everyone chance to find thinking loud, you know, and that's all the things that it gives. So it's very healing for all of us and for the movement, for maybe Roger Hallam, I don't know.
Yeah. And I like to see Roger take part in a circle with maybe 3 others and a facilitator, you know, perhaps XR Germany, XR Jews, you know, perhaps the groups that have been most affected by it, or with him and some of his strongest critics. Just so those are just some other ideas of, you know, how to go forward.
And particularly, you see the opportunity to organize such empathy circle with Roger Hallam and some the most harmed by this situation representatives of groups that are the most harmed. For example, XR Germany activists, Jews, and other activists. For example, the strongest opponents, or and obviously with Roger Hallam to give him opportunity to have a voice, have a opportunity to comment.
Yeah, and even he and some of the other co-founders are high-profile people in XR, so that they have an empathy circle to. If the high-profile people like Gail, I can't remember her last name, but
Brad Brook
and Rupert. I think there's another. I can't remember his last name.
So another thing, you think that if some prominent activists from XR, like co-founders like Brad Brook and others, would participate in such circle, it would be also very good for the movement and for other activists to hear, to listen to this talk, and it might heal the whole situation and the climate
at least it would model this empathic dialogue process. So, you know, the more we do it, the more it models, people would see it. It would have healing, but it would also model the practice
so this
as
is
well.
So this is important element, that such circles within co-founders or leaders of XR movement would model the empathy attitude, the empathy approach within the movement, and create kind of good climate for more circles and building sort of community with empathic approach.
I feel heard. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will choose Dave. Dave,
Okay.
would you listen to
I'm listening.
Me?
Yes, I will.
Oh God, I focus so much about what Edwin was saying that I've forgotten what I wanted to say. Would you reflect me?
Yes, you got so involved in what Edmund was saying that you forgot what you were going to say.
And I feel really empty mind right now. So I'm in a best Buddhist state of mind. I have empty mind, totally.
So you're in a Buddhist state of mind? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You're feeling very peaceful and
Yeah.
meditative.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm thinking about the circles. I'm quite sure I wanted to say something important, but I can't recall it now.
So you're still thinking right now.
Yeah, but let's leave it. happens. What is important, I think that Roger Hallam needs empathy because it is harmful to what he said and how he said. It's harmful to the whole movement, I think, in my opinion, and to every separate activist. But now he is in a position of person who might be victimized or unfairly treated. So it is very difficult situation. I would like to hear him participating in empathy circle and explaining his intentions and what he thinks and how he responds to others. I would like to hear that.
Okay. So you'd like to hear Roger, what he has to say I think getting in an empathy circle type of situation where people can empathize with him.
Yeah. And particularly empathy circle, because if it would be just regular discussion when everybody says what he or she thinks and that's it, he might not be fully heard, and I want him to be heard. So yeah, I believe empathy circle, restorating empathy circle would be better than just regular discussion.
So the structure of an empathy circle will allow him to be fully heard, and you want him to be fully heard.
Yeah, and I want to recall the very important element of empathy circle, which I believe is an element of culture of empathy, we try to vision for last few weeks in our other circles. There are two things. It's trust in a process and believe that other people have goodwill, good intentions. So we need to trust each other and trust in a process. This is one thing.
So in an empathy circle, we trust the process and we trust the goodwill of other people that are in the circle.
Yeah.
And you think that's really important. That's very important for him to be fully heard.
Yeah, and another thing is curiosity. Capacity and curiosity, will to hear somebody else, being curious about what another person will say, will think, feel. Curiosity is very important.
So curiosity is an important factor in allowing another person to be fully heard.
Yeah. And I believe that empathy circle might create that through this conflict, we can build the community, XR community, on the higher level if we try to do that. Through the resolving this problem, we can reconstruct our community on a higher, more empathic level. That's it.
So if I understand you correctly, I think through the empathy process, I think specifically the empathy circle, feel able to build a higher level into XR.
I mean that the situation destroyed a little bit movement, the community, put us in a conflict. So if we solve the problem through the empathy circle, we can reconstruct, restore the community, XR community on a higher, more empathic level. That's what I mean.
Okay. So through empathy circle, we can kind of restore the connection between members of XR because it's been damaged, and it seems that this would be a path to follow in order to repair the damage.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. It's going to take me a minute to switch into the points that I want to make. I remember now.
You have to choose somebody. You have to choose someone to.
I have to choose somebody. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I'll choose Bill.
Listening.
Okay. So I'm a little concerned. I was trying to imagine what it would be like to put an empathy circle with people, let's say, that are upset with Roger Hallam in the same circle with Roger, and have that circle be in the format that we have, not so much the format, but having it public, because this is recorded and is public. And I think that people in the XR would be quite reluctant to allow themselves to be vulnerable, express some deep emotions in a public setting. So I was trying to put myself in that position. I know that I'd be worried about the media getting a hold of it and distorting what was said, and then because I think that was part of the problem with what happened in the first place, was the reaction of the media.
So you were concerned about this whole idea of a circle that would be public with Roger and everybody because of the media's tendency to distort things. And so the recording aspect or the public aspect, also you feel that it might be a damper on people really expressing themselves in a deeper way.
Yes, because actually they are high profile people. And anything they say and do is likely to be reported on by the media, and the media is looking for something sensational so that they can sell papers or whatever they're selling, and they're not so concerned about perhaps the entire situation. They can pick out something that they think will promote the media that they work for.
Okay, so you're feeling that the media is not necessarily an honest broker and not really looking to really delve into the deeper truths of a matter, but more or less are looking for sound bites that are provocative that would help them sell papers or articles.
You got it. Yes. And I do like the idea of of empathy circle structure within XR and promoting that idea, as long as it's safe for the people within the circle to be empathetic and to be honest about what is going on with them.
Okay, so you like the idea of the empathy circle, and you feel that you also like the idea of it being core to the principles of XR and their democratic principles. But you, before you fully sign on to that, you have to make sure that the people who are involved feel real safe in their expressions, and that their words won't be distorted and turned against them in some way.
Yes, no, that's true. So I'm also wondering if, let's see, there's the idea of learning empathy by example. In other words, if people within XR are empathetic and they have a solid enough relationship or a continuing connection, and I don't know about the inner workings of XR, but I do believe that can just in itself influence other people that you are connected to be more empathetic.
Okay, so what you believe is by learning by doing, and you're kind of unsure about exactly who everybody in XR is or what their priorities are, and there seems to be some unclarity there. But you basically like the idea. You're looking for a way forward with empathy in some way. And I'm sorry, and correct me if I'm wrong or if I missed something, please.
I think partly by being empathetic within the XR community yourself and listening, you're modeling empathy, that you are by definition promoting empathy within the organization.
So you see empathy as, as I think all of us do, as core to the XR principles, and by being empathetic and modeling it, then you're doing what you should be doing, and you expect that behavior from XR members.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. That last one, maybe you're a little hesitant on. I don't know.
Well, partly because I couldn't quite hear the very last of it.
Oh, you expect people, because it's core, you expect people in XR to role model empathy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Did you say expect?
Yeah, I said expect.
I wouldn't say expect.
Okay, yeah, I thought that might be a bit strong.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. Sorry.
I see. Okay. So instead of expect, what's a better word?
Well, I would think if you want empathy within, I'm just saying, if you want empathy within XR, then one way to do that, to spread it, is to be empathetic yourself whenever you're communicating with people.
Right.
And hopefully that will, I find that I just find in my life that does help people over time. I wouldn't say it's maybe sufficient, but it certainly helps.
So you feel that you just want to emphasize the importance of role modeling empathy within XR as a way to promote it.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes. Excellent. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Okay.
I think in terms of our time, we're just have 12 minutes left, so we could just stop here and just do a debrief. Like how was this experience without empathic listening? If we just want to go around and share a minute or so of how was the experience for you. I guess I'll model it. I'm really glad we did this. I'm so glad that Dave, you were here to take part. That Yeah, a circle is usually 4 people, I think is a good amount. So, you know, we had our 4 here. So I think this is a good example of it. So I'm really glad we did this. And I have a whole bunch of other things I'd love to talk about, you know, so I have a whole bunch of other responses. So I feel like got another hour or so of stuff I'd love to talk about. But, you know, maybe next week I have notes on that. So yeah, so that's me. Maybe Bill, do you want to?
Sure.
Share?
Yeah, I find that this is, I feel, painful is not the wrong word, but I feel like really going into, you know, very sensitive, you know, raw nerve areas. And, you know, and I feel proceed cautiously, but it's something that we do have to do to address these issues and to acknowledge the, you know, the dark sides in ourselves and in others, and try to come together to find a better way.
Thanks, Dave. Do you want to say anything?
Yes, I like the way we went from empathy to some possible ways of moving forward. Seemed like a natural process. Just sort of one thing led to another, and there was an exchange of ideas that I found quite exciting. And like you, I would love to talk longer.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it happens very often to us that we start talking and suddenly we have to end the circle, but we would like to talk more. And I remember now what I wanted to say, but I will keep this for the next circle. I like this circle very much. It was, I don't know if I was in good shape, but I feel like I could express myself quite clear with my thoughts. And it was very calm. I was afraid on the beginning what will gonna happen because the topic is very, how you say that, thorny.
Mm-hmm.
Topic is very thorny, and so it's very risky. But it's always happened that I'm afraid of something, and then if it's empathy circle, it appears that it's actually great. I don't know how it's happening, but it's always the same. So I'm glad. And I truly believe in the deliberation, and particularly deliberation with the empathy circle method is the way to solve problems, conflict, and restoring on the higher level. Restoring community on the higher level. I truly believe in it. I feel comfortable with it. And I hope that's what will gonna happen.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for taking part, and, you know, stop the recording now.
Wait a minute, wait.
There's more?
Just let's say that another circle is on Thursday 12. Am I right?
Yeah,
12.
it's 12 at 10 a.m. Pacific, which would be
6
p.m. Eastern, and 6 p.m. That's
Okay.
Eastern time, 6 p.m. GMT,
Yeah.
and 7 Europe.
Central Europe.
Central Europe time.
Yeah,
So,
7 p.m.
Yeah, so then we may kind of set more of these up too. Maybe get if more people take part, and I'll be posting this to Facebook too, so people can
Don't
watch.
be afraid. Don't be afraid, and trust everybody's responsibility for words that we use.
Yeah, I think
Let's
the
try.
openness and empathy thrives on openness and transparency. So, I think that this is part of it. So,
Yeah.
okay. Anything else final?